The day unfolded like a dream carved from gold and crystal. Chandeliers sparkled above a hall designed to resemble a palace, each corner draped in silk and blooming with rare flowers flown in from across the globe. Rows of glittering guests filled the venue, the air alive with whispers of admiration and envy. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every detail for magazines that would crown it the wedding of the year. At the center of this spectacle stood the billionaire groom, his presence commanding the room. Tall, sharp in his custom suit, he radiated confidence, the kind that came from power and wealth amassed through years of dominance in business. His smile gleamed under the lights, practiced yet convincing, as though this moment were the pinnacle of a flawless life. Beside him, the bride looked every bit the queen he had promised the world. Draped in a gown shimmering with pearls and diamonds, she moved like a vision out of fantasy. Her beauty drew sighs, her grace silenced even the most critical eyes. Society adored her, the media idolized her, and the guests leaned forward to capture every glance and gesture. She seemed untouched by human flaws, the perfect counterpart to a man who had everything. Together, they stood as if sculpted for the spotlight, the embodiment of success, elegance, and perfection. The vows prepared to be exchanged were whispered about as if they would seal not only a marriage but a legacy. Glasses clinked, laughter sparkled, and orchestras swelled with triumphant notes. To the world, it was a union of fairy tales, a love story free of shadows. No one guessed that beneath the glittering mask of perfection, a storm was approaching, one that would shatter the illusion in ways no guest could imagine. Long before the cameras and chandeliers, the billionaire's life was carved from struggle and sacrifice. Few in the glittering hall knew that his beginnings were humble, marked by nights spent counting coins to survive and days clawing at every opportunity that would inch him closer to the empire he now ruled. He had been a man who once believed in love as much as he believed in ambition, a man whose heart had once belonged entirely to a woman who stood by him when the world offered him nothing. She had shared his dreams, cheered his victories, and comforted him in defeat. Together they had built the foundation of the life he now claimed as solely his own. But as power seduced him, ambition grew sharper, and the warmth of love became an inconvenient shadow. The woman who had once been his partner became a chapter he no longer wished to read. He buried her memory beneath contracts, wealth, and ruthless decisions, each success another shovelful of dirt over the grave of their past. To society, he reinvented himself as a man who had risen alone, polished and flawless. The ex-wife who had once sacrificed everything for him vanished from his story, erased like an ink stain from an immaculate page. His new bride never heard her name, never caught even a whisper of the love that once burned so fiercely. To her and the world, he was the man who had always belonged to luxury, untouched by heartbreak or betrayal. Yet in the silence of his hidden past lay truths more dangerous than any rival, truths he prayed would never resurface. For in burying his past, he had not destroyed it. He had only sown the seeds for its return. The ceremony was reaching its peak, the orchestra swelling as the bride prepared to walk toward her groom. Smiles glittered across the hall, champagne glasses lifted in anticipation of the perfect union. Then, from outside the grand entrance, the low hum of an engine cut through the music. Heads turned as a sleek black limousine rolled to a slow, deliberate stop. Its glossy surface reflected the lights of the venue, its presence commanding attention like a shadow over the sun. A hush fell across the crowd, curiosity rippling from guest to guest. Even the photographers paused, their lenses swiveling toward the unexpected arrival. The driver stepped out and, with precision, opened the door. From the darkness within emerged a woman whose presence struck harder than any storm. Draped in a gown of deep satin that clung with effortless elegance, she walked with the poise of someone who had conquered both pain and time. Her skin glowed beneath the flashes of cameras, her expression calm yet unreadable. There was no trembling, no hesitation, only a deliberate stride that echoed across the marble floor. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Some gasped in recognition, others in disbelief. The ex-wife, the woman forgotten in his story, had arrived at the very altar where he sought to rewrite his life. The billionaire's face paled, his confident mask cracking at the edges. His bride clutched her bouquet tighter, her smile faltering as she sensed the unease spreading through the hall. Guests leaned toward one another, hungry for gossip, their voices rising in sharp, scandalized murmurs. Cameras clicked furiously, each flash immortalizing the collision of past and present. The air grew thick with tension, a storm of secrets ready to break. The wedding was no longer perfect. It had just become unforgettable. She entered the hall like a vision from a story no one dared to tell. Her presence, a quiet thunder that silenced even the orchestra. Every step she took carried an unshakable grace, the kind only born from survival. Her chin was lifted, her shoulders squared, but beneath the elegance lingered traces of old wounds, pain etched into the lines of her past, carried not as weakness but as armor. The guests felt it instantly, the blend of beauty and sorrow, strength and heartbreak, woven into her aura like threads of fire and ice. Her eyes did not wander, nor did she acknowledge the murmurs or the barrage of camera flashes. Instead, they locked on one man, the billionaire groom, piercing through his polished exterior with the weight of a history no diamond ring could outshine. He shifted in his stance, for the first time looking less like the untouchable king of industry and more like a man caught in his own lies. The crowd sensed it, a storm brewing behind her steady gaze, and a shiver of anticipation rippled through the hall. The bride, still holding her bouquet, felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The woman before her radiated a power that had nothing to do with money or status. It was the raw, undeniable force of truth. Every instinct warned her that this stranger was not here to bless their union, but to unravel it. A subtle dread twisted inside her chest as she glanced at her groom, noticing the tension in his jaw, the flicker of fear in his eyes. It was clear to everyone watching, this was no coincidence. The ex-wife had not come to observe. She had come with a purpose, and the moment of reckoning was only beginning. Years before the limousines, the cameras, and the towering empire, there had been only two young souls bound by dreams larger than their means. He was a man with ambition burning in his veins, and she was the woman who saw past his empty pockets to the brilliance in his eyes. Their love had blossomed in modest cafes and quiet walks through city streets, where laughter was richer than gold and whispered promises stitched their future together. They built dreams side by side, scribbling plans on scraps of paper, believing they could conquer the world as long as they had each other. When his first business collapsed, she was the one who worked double shifts to keep food on the table. When creditors circled like vultures, she held his hand, reminding him that failure was only a step toward greatness. Together, they endured sleepless nights and endless sacrifices, her faith in him unshaken even when he doubted himself. Their love was not born in luxury but forged in fire, and for a time, it seemed unbreakable. But success has a way of changing men. The moment money began to flow and recognition followed, ambition sharpened into greed. He no longer dreamed of shared victories but of solitary crowns. Where once he saw her as his partner, he now viewed her as a reminder of struggle, a blemish on the polished image he wished to present. Slowly, the warmth between them froze. He began attending events without her, answering her devotion with indifference, and hiding behind a smile that no longer reached his eyes. The final betrayal came when he chose reputation over love. Whispers of her not fitting his new world grew into cruel words spoken behind closed doors. Then came the abandonment, the day he walked away, papers in hand, trading vows for contracts, trading the woman who had carried him through storms for the illusion of perfection. She was left shattered, not because she lost a husband, but because the man she believed in had destroyed the very love they had built together. Their divorce was not just an ending, it was the burial of trust, sealed by his hunger for status. The hall, once filled with music and the perfume of roses, grew tense as the ex-wife moved closer to the altar. Guests shifted in their seats, torn between curiosity and unease. Then, with a voice steady but sharp enough to slice through the silence, she spoke. "Before you crown him as the perfect husband," she said, her eyes sweeping across the stunned audience, "you should know the man behind the mask." The billionaire stiffened, his smile faltering, but the weight of her words could not be stopped. She painted a picture of their past, not as gossip, but as testimony. She spoke of the nights she worked tirelessly so he could chase his dreams, the sacrifices she made when there was nothing but hope keeping them alive. She spoke of his rise, built not on solitary genius but on the foundation of loyalty and love that he later cast aside. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she revealed how, in his hunger for status, he had abandoned her, leaving scars that wealth could never erase. The billionaire attempted to interrupt, but each protest sounded hollow against her truth. Guests whispered in shock, their gazes shifting uneasily between groom and bride. The media's cameras captured every moment, their lenses feasting on scandal. The bride's hands trembled, her perfect image of her husband crumbling with each revelation. By the time the ex-wife finished, the room was no longer a sanctuary of romance but a courtroom of judgment. The truths he had buried beneath years of power and wealth now lay exposed for the world to see. And as silence followed her words, the billionaire realized that no empire could shield him from the consequences of his own betrayal. The bride stood frozen, her bouquet trembling in her hands as the ex-wife's words sank deeper with every breath. The man she had admired, the man she believed to be flawless, suddenly appeared like a stranger cloaked in lies. Each revelation peeled back the layers of charm and confidence, exposing a selfishness and cruelty she had never imagined. The perfect picture she had clung to shattered, leaving sharp fragments that cut into her heart. She replayed moments in her mind, his evasive answers, his occasional coldness, the way he dismissed questions about his past. They now glared at her as warning signs she had ignored, blinded by the glitter of his empire. Around her, the murmurs of guests only amplified her sense of humiliation. Was she marrying a man or stepping into a prison built on deceit? Tears welled in her eyes, not just from betrayal but from the collapse of everything she thought she knew. The love she believed she was walking into now felt like a carefully staged illusion. And as she glanced at him, his face tight with fury and fear, she knew the man standing at the altar was not the hero of her story, but perhaps its greatest mistake. The billionaire's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with the desperation of a man cornered. Pride pushed him forward, his voice rising above the murmurs as he tried to twist the narrative. He spoke of ambition, of sacrifices made for greatness, framing his past as necessary, his ex-wife as bitter and vengeful. Yet the words carried no conviction, echoing hollowly against the truth that had just been laid bare. The confidence he once wore like armor now looked cracked, fragile under the weight of so many eyes upon him. Arrogance urged him to stand taller, to glare down at his accuser, but guilt seeped through in the quiver of his tone, the flicker of panic in his gaze. He had built an empire on perfection, on the image of a man untouchable by scandal, but that empire was crumbling brick by brick as whispers grew into open condemnation. The bride's shattered expression was another blow, stripping him of the illusion of control. Each attempt at defense only deepened the wound, the mask slipping further until all that remained was a man exposed, flawed, ruthless, and alone. In that moment, the empire of lies he had so carefully constructed collapsed, not with silence but with humiliation. The ex-wife stood tall, her voice steady though her heart pounded with memories of pain. She had not come to destroy the wedding or to bask in revenge, but to reclaim what had been taken from her, her dignity. Every word she spoke was measured, not drenched in bitterness but in truth. Her composure disarmed those expecting a scene of rage. Instead, they saw a woman who had endured betrayal and risen above it. She did not insult him, nor did she plead for sympathy. She simply revealed the man behind the mask, exposing his hypocrisy to the very world he had deceived. Guests who had once admired him now shifted uneasily, their eyes reflecting judgment not of her, but of him. The bride, though devastated, could not help but sense the strength radiating from the woman before her, the kind of strength born only from survival. When she finished, she lifted her chin with quiet pride, no longer defined by the scars of abandonment but by the courage to confront it. Without shouting, without cruelty, she had won. Her triumph was not his downfall. It was her freedom, her grace shining brighter than all the wealth in the room. The hall that once glittered with celebration now echoed with chaos. The bride, her face pale and her hands trembling, slowly set her bouquet down. The whispers of the crowd swelled around her, but her voice cut through them with quiet strength. "I will not marry a lie," she declared, her eyes meeting the billionaire's one last time. With that, she turned away, her gown trailing like a curtain closing on a play that would never be performed. Gasps followed her, but no one stopped her. Her decision was final. The billionaire stood frozen, his confidence shattered, his empire of perfection lying in ruins at his feet. Cameras captured every second of his humiliation, the downfall of a man who believed himself untouchable. The guests who had once idolized him now averted their eyes, unwilling to be seen siding with a man so thoroughly exposed. His carefully curated world had collapsed in a single night, and no wealth could buy back the respect he had lost. Meanwhile, the ex-wife walked out with her head held high, her satin gown whispering against the marble floor as she left the hall. The black limousine waited, its door open like a symbol of closure and rebirth. She did not look back. There was no need. She was not broken by the confrontation but reborn through it, her dignity restored in front of those who once only saw her absence. As the limo pulled away, the message lingered in the air like an unshakable truth. Lies may build empires, but truth will always tear them down. Wealth fades, power crumbles, but dignity endures. And in the end, it is not riches or status that shine brightest, it is the courage to face betrayal and rise unbroken.